to the Own Your Ship podcast here on YouTube.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Own Your Ship podcast. I'm so happy that you guys have tuned in. And this week, I'm going to be talking about something that's super dear and special and important to me because I feel like not only is it something that I had to work through, but I feel like it's something that a lot of us are still struggling with. This week, we're talking about being our most authentic self. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit about myself. I'm going to go a little more in depth this week. So I was raised in a very conservative Pentecostal church. So if you guys know anything about the Pentecostal church, you know we weren't allowed to, and in some cases still not allowed to, wear pants as women, couldn't wear jewelry, couldn't perm your hair, couldn't color your hair, couldn't wear nail polish, couldn't wear earrings, the whole spiel. The church, it had its own standards. And I just want to preface this by saying nothing is wrong with having your own standards. The way I see it is if you were to start working at a job and the job said, hey, this is the uniform, you have to wear this every day or you cannot work here. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want to work there, right? And if you do decide to work there, you have to wear the uniform. It's just the standard. That's the standard. And I believe within my heart wholeheartedly that if the church values and standards don't align with what you feel you're being called to or what you feel you've been led to or so forth, then find another church that has the standards that align with what you believe. Simple, straight. I don't believe in staying and being rebellious. And it's just, no, it makes no sense. All right. So speaking of being rebellious, because of these standards and stuff, I would rebel a lot because as a kid, I didn't understand the purpose of the standards or the values. I kind of felt out of place because I'm going to school and there's a lot of things I can't participate in because of the standards of the church I went to. For example, I was interested in dancing when I was young, and I would want to go to dance class and all that stuff. And it was completely shut down, especially by my father. Completely shut down. We don't do that. That's not what this is. We're not going to do that. And I found myself as I was transitioning into my teenage years that I was super rebellious because I wanted to fit in and I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. I didn't fit in at home, I didn't fit in at school, I didn't fit in at church. And to be honest, those were the only three places I was going. Like school, home, church, school, home, church, school, home, church. There was no sleepovers. There's no going out to friends and hanging out with friends. There was maybe an occasional birthday party or two, but those are few and far in between. So again, it was just church, home, school, and that's it. I went through the phase of really being irresponsible. And I think all that started because I was told by a youth leader that I didn't believe. Like, I didn't truly believe in God. I didn't truly believe in the ministry and what God stood for. And that kind of pushed me over the edge. Like, I was already dealing with my own stuff. And that was the icing on the cake for me. It was like, okay, Melissa, since they say you don't believe, just do what you want to do anyways. But what I failed to understand was me doing what I wanted to do was not being authentic to myself. It was just out of a place of rebellion. I was doing something that I thought was gonna get the attention of someone to really come and sit me down and say, okay, Melissa, what's going on? And that never happened, you know? And I look back now, and of course, I'm more mature and I understand that what I did was super silly. But then again, being raised in an environment where you're not encouraged to speak up, you're not encouraged to ask questions, you're encouraged to take this is what it is, accept it for what it is, don't ask no questions. And if you do, you're going to be painted as rebellious. So, as you can imagine, going to school and not being able to fit in was tough. So back home in Jamaica, I went to an all girls high school, and that's pretty common. There are some schools where it's just strictly for girls, some just strictly for boys, some co-ed. My school was a Catholic school, and I think for the most part as girls, we were just deprived of seeing boys. We wanted to see boys. A lot of us are going through the hormonal changes and all that stuff where we just want to talk about sex and all that good stuff. And I remember I got my hands on a pornographic magazine, and whew, I'm gonna have to do an episode about that magazine by itself. Like if you want to hear about that, just let me know in the comments. Let me know you want to hear about that. But I brought up a pornographic magazine to school with the intent that, one, I was a hustler because I was having people pay me to read the magazine for maybe 30 minutes to an hour at a time or between periods. And I was making decent money. And I was doing that not just for the money, but more so because I wanted to be able to fit in. Like people who I've never spoken to before, like upperclassmen, they were coming to me like, "Oh, you Melissa, right? Oh, you the one that got the book?" So it kind of made me feel special. Like for once, people knew who I was. I felt important. And that didn't end well. So let me know if you want to hear about that, because I'll do an episode just about that, just about that. So yeah, those are some of the stuff I did. But then on the other hand, I tried to be very skillful and sneaky with what I was doing because I feared punishment. I knew for a fact that if I was caught in something that I was not supposed to be in, that the ramifications would be great. My father has always been the disciplinarian, and he made no qualms about punishing when he thought you would do something to impact his image, which is a whole nother episode too. So if I did something that would make people say, "Oh, but aren't you such and such's daughter? um you know I thought you guys were Christians." If anything like that were to ever come up, best believe there were going to be ramifications. And I've had my fair share of ramifications, some that were warranted, others where it's like, okay, is this kind of like abuse? I've done crazy stuff. I've lied, I've stolen. And again, this is coming from someone who was supposed to be this holier than thou Christian girl in the church, coming from a superb Christian, holy family. And that wasn't it. And as time went on and I transitioned from my teenage years into adulthood, I found myself going into bad relationships, dealing with bad situations. And it took me a long time, but I ended up realizing that I had daddy issues, which is a whole nother podcast episode that is actually coming out real soon. I had serious daddy issues, and I didn't notice at the time, but I was putting myself in these weird situations or situationships. Somewhere I even crossed the line and even turned a blind eye to some of the things that I did because I felt like I needed love and affection and attention, and whoever was going to give it to me, I'm going to take it. I don't care what your situation is. I'm just going to take it. Again, it was not a mature way to look at things, but well, there's no but. It was wrong. It was wrong, straight up. So I didn't stop until I ended up hitting rock bottom. And at that point, something needed to change. I had to be honest with myself for the first time in my life about everything that I've ever done, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. I had to be able to stand up and say, "Okay, Melissa, you were wrong here. You were wrong here. What are we going to do to get you back on track?" For me, that meant starting over. So I packed up all my stuff, moved to a whole new state, and started rebuilding. It was difficult, but it was necessary. It was a breath of fresh air that I needed. And it came at a time where it was almost like God wanted it to happen then, you know? Once I settled down, I was able to go and write a book, which is right here, From Broken Pieces to Masterpiece. And in that book, I really detail a lot of the stuff that I went through throughout my childhood and my early adulthood, and how I got through certain things and how I started my journey to mastering peace. And it's something that has impacted me in such a deep, deep way because since then I've met my husband, we started a family together, and all that good stuff. Within that new phase of my life, there were still parts of me that was not as authentic as I would have liked them to be. And that's one thing we have to remember. We got to be patient with ourselves, because we can get up today and say, I'm not going to do this anymore, and expect the habit to just drop, especially if it's a habit you've been doing all your life. That's not the reality. Sometimes there are layers that need to be peeled back, like onions, peeled back until you get to the center of what all the issues are, so you can finally shed that. That's not something that happens overnight. And you have to be patient with yourself. You got to keep working. Yes, you're going to mess up sometimes. Yes, you might fall back into bad habits, but being honest with yourself, being true with yourself, and striving to get to that new place is what matters most. Trying to be consistent is what matters most. Hey, I've made a lot of mistakes. I still consider myself a Christian. I might not adhere to a lot of the things the Pentecostal church stands by today, but I still consider myself a child of God. But on the other hand, I can cuss like a sailor. Like, it's a part of me. It has been a part of me. But because I was living in a facade where I was living up to other people's expectation, I had to pretend as though I was a perfect, holier than now, saved, sanctified, Holy Ghost filled, all that stuff. And behind closed doors, the reality was there are times when I would go weeks without reading my Bible or even praying. There are times when I would go weeks or months without even stepping foot into church. That's the reality. And I know a lot of Christian people struggle with that as well, because again, the expectation is to live up to a certain standard. And when you don't live up to that standard, you're looked down upon, you're frowned upon, you're a backslider, you're a sinner, all this other stuff. No one wants to be constantly reminded about their flaws. And I'm not saying this is an excuse for people not to talk to you or people not to encourage you to get out of the place you're in and strive for better. A lot of people in the church don't know the difference between love and chastising truth. So there are other things I did as well to kind of get to my authentic self. Like, I had to cut people out of my life who were considered hazards. And the big misconception is because your family or you share blood or whatever, that you should never cut these people off. No. If these people are toxic and they have no intentions of changing, and you've tried different avenues for all of you to get on the same page and nothing works, then why are you keeping these people in your life? They're draining your energy. They're sucking you dry. But the church is not going to tell you that. Let me stop talking about the church before the church come for me. No, but in some cases, you're going to always get the answers. Oh, you need to forgive. You need to turn the other cheek. What would Jesus do? And that's all fine and dandy, but you know how much you can bear. They like to throw the scripture in, God is not going to give you more than you can bear. How do you know that this is not where the limit is and God is telling me, okay, time for you to step back. You've done everything that you can. So I had to cut that out too. And I still consider myself being on this journey to mastering peace, on this journey to being my most authentic self, learning to love me entirely, learning to accept and appreciate the me that you see in front of you. And there's a lot of people on this journey with me, some who have been transparent about where they are in life right now, and others who are still a little hesitant about coming out of the shadows and being honest and true to themselves because of the fear of backlash and all this other stuff. I am embracing being real with myself. And that's my encouragement for you guys this week. Embrace being your most authentic self. I know it's not easy at times, but it definitely can be done. And this is something I want to talk about. Like, what are your experiences? What have you gone through? Does your situation sound similar to what I went through with the church, with family members, with friends? Let's talk about it. You can leave your questions and comments below, or you can head over to my Instagram page at Melissa T. Walker _. Let's talk about being authentic. Thank you guys for tuning in this week. Well, that's all, y'all. Thanks for tuning in this week. If you haven't already, please subscribe and leave a review for the show. It helps a whole lot. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at MelissaTWalker_ and use the hashtag OYS podcast for more great content.